Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Pros and cons to compound bows. Let me put this up on the wall first. Okay, so different types of bows, obviously. Traditional bows, compound bows. They're definitely not in the same universe together. So, and each has their good and bad points, or pros and cons. Now, I look at the pro side of a compound as whether you're a beginner archer or somebody who's been in it for a while, you already know that as someone who's been in it for a while at least, that once you get these things dialed in for the poundage to the spine of the arrow you're using, the weight of the arrow, the correct length, etc., you can literally get groups like this in literally no time at all. Okay? Not a lot of effort there required to become very accurate, very fast with a compound bow. The biggest bonus here is you have sights, something you don't have on traditional bows, okay? Now, as a beginner, what I just said is very true. You can become a very proficient shooter very quickly with a compound bow once everything's set up and dialed in correctly. Now, the sights are probably one of your biggest bonuses, but also one of your biggest downsides. If you are considering hunting, for example, with compound, you need a rangefinder. You need to know exactly the precise range between you and that animal. You also need to know if your sight is dialed in to those ranges, or you have to know the actual available, call it fudge room, in between ranges where you could still get that kill shot properly without too much extra effort, because you're not going to be resighting when you're out hunting. Okay, it's not going to happen, right? Because you need a target to shoot at, to sight in on. That's not happening when you're out hunting. So whatever ranges you practice at have to be the same ranges in which you are going to be hunting at. All right, that is definitely a must-have, but that is still not a guarantee. This is one of the bigger drawbacks to compound bows with the sights is if you're set at 13 yards, I know for myself, from my own practicing, that I can go from 13 yards to 16 yards, and that's pretty much the end of my fudge room for being able to hit spot on. Anything more past that, I'm screwed. My POI, or point of impact of my arrow, is going to go much differently for me. Okay, it's going to go lower. If I get too close to my target for the pin I'm using, then I'll have the opposite effect. My point of impact goes up too high, right? So I'm going to miss the vitals, right? So I have to know exactly how much yardage my bow with my arrow spine and my arrow weight, etc., is going to give me for that fudge room, because weight of arrow, okay, especially that front of center weight, okay, so your broadhead, okay, the grain of broadhead you use is going to create extra weight, which is going to change impact, which means you got to change your sighting around to compensate for that new weighted head. You have to know exactly what it's going to do before you go out into the field hunting. All right, but you're still going to have a problem where if you are too close, you can't take the shot. If you are too far away for the range of any of your pins to be able to be workable, you cannot take that shot. This is the beauty of traditional archery when you're doing gap sighting or instinctive shooting and you become very proficient at both. Okay, you don't have to worry about any of this. You don't even need a rangefinder. You are good to go. That is a huge benefit that traditional archery has over compound any day of the week. So the sights can go for you, but the sights can go against you on a compound. So it becomes a pro and con in one. The other con side is you have a lot more maintenance cost in a compound bow. So if you were to look at maintenance every year, your cost is higher on a compound over traditional. Traditional, the only thing you got to worry about every year on those things is making sure the string is always waxed. And as long as it's always waxed, and as long as you have no broken strands whatsoever in that string, that's it. I mean, and what's a new string? $45? And you string it up yourself. Compound bows are always strung up all the time, and they're designed to deal with that and being strung up all the time. Also, if you need to restring your compound, that is going to cost you a lot of money unless you have a bow press and know how to do it yourself safely, okay? So my PSE Stinger 3G, I showed you at the beginning of the video, it's $200 to put a new string and new cables on that bow and get it all lubricated, all that jazz that it would need for a normal restring and tune-up, okay? It's about 200 bucks. It cost me $45 for a new string for my traditional bows, each one. Same price, they're the same length of bow. I could even share the string between them if I wanted to because of the exact same length of bows. They use the exact same length of string. So if I want to jump from my left to my right-handed bow, no big deal. Okay, but right now each one has its own string and it'll always stay that way regardless. But you know what I mean, right? I have that option. You don't get that option on a compound. What you got is what you got. When that string starts to break down, you need to replace the string and the cables. I would do both at once. Better be safe than sorry. If you do not maintain the strings on any of your bows with waxing them every time before you use them, okay, this can create problems with breakdown of the string prematurely, especially if you end up shooting in the rain, because you never know what's going to happen, especially out hunting. But even if you practice shooting in the rain, so you know what you're doing in the rain when you're out hunting and you're stuck in the rain, you still have to make sure you dry off that entire bow, dry off the string really well, and you're going to have to make sure that you re-wax that string immediately and be liberal with the wax, but not to the point where, you know, if you flick the string or you shoot the thing that wax flies in your face. That's just stupidity level at its best for over waxing. You do need to work the wax into the strings on your compound, okay? Everywhere where there's exposed strands, those are the parts that you need to lubricate with the wax and coat. The other parts that have serving wrap around that area, you don't have to worry about doing those, and you're advised not to do it because that can cause a derailment, okay? In which case, your bow basically derails and massive damage happens. So there are some scary things about compounds that still scare the crap out of me, but I don't mind it because I maintain my bows. I wax the strings every time before I use them. I have 2 compounds and I have 2 traditional bows. But I always wax the strings every time before I use them. I always inspect my bows carefully for any kind of damage, looseness of anything. I make sure that everything is always the way it should be, okay? That is a habit you need to learn to form if you're going to be a compound bow owner, okay? You have to maintain these things. And there's a lot of maintenance you can definitely do on your own. You don't need a shop for, okay? Now, when it comes to adjusting limb poundage, you can drop your limb poundage or you increase your poundage depending on where you're going to be shooting at, what you're going to be shooting at, all this sort of stuff. But what you target shoot at for poundage and everything is the same thing you do for hunting. The arrows you use for practice, you need to use the same exact brand and setup of arrows for your hunting. This way, everything works together properly. So if you're going to use 250 grain broadheads, you need 250 grain field points because otherwise your POI is whacked and you don't want to be able to, you don't want to have to end up resighting every time before you go hunting. So they say what you practice with is what you hunt with as far as weight ratios go. Okay, but you practice with field tips, that's fine, go to your broadheads and same weight, okay? Everything goes fine. If you want to practice with broadheads, that's fine too. Just make sure you have a target that is designed to safely take the impact and the removal of such broadheads without damaging broadheads, okay? But you can also get, they call them dead meat version 2s or V2. They're a really nice broadhead. They actually come with a precision practice point, and you can buy like even a handful of the practice points, so this way you don't have to use your broadheads for practice. You can just use the broadhead practice tip, which doesn't have the blades, and you're going to have the same results with that practice tip. You'll have the same results with the actual broadhead when it's in use with the blades on it. So, you know, this sort of thing you've got to keep in mind, right? So there's a lot of there's pros and cons, right? But I think that I like the compound because the learning curve is very minimal. Okay, you can buy a compound bow today, and within the inside of 2 weeks, you could be doing groups like this or smaller. Okay, that is so simple and easy to do. It just takes a matter of sighting things in, setting things up right, and once you've done that and you've practiced and you can hold that bow out nice and steady and you can hold it back, I mean, at least with the compound too, the one big benefit it has over traditional is you're pulling back all that weight, it builds up to its strongest point, and it comes to the breaking point where it lets off that 40, 50, 70 pounds, and it drops all of a sudden to between 5 and 15 pounds, which is like so this way you can stay there longer, focus on your target, and release. Away you go, animal done. Okay, that is the beauty about compounds or traditional. Traditional, you start building that weight up, and it builds and builds and builds and builds, and by the time you get to the end, all that weight that's available to you at your draw length of that bow, you have, and you got to hold that actual weight there, which is the opposite effect of a compound, right? So you got to pick your battles on which way you're going to go here. So, but I still think that the amount of pros in a compound outweigh its negative sides in the end, okay? I'm going hunting for the first time in my life this October for turkey and then next for deer. Now, whether or not I get an animal depends if they're around and in the area we're shooting at or hunting at, etc. Okay, we may end up having deer and turkey tag soup. It just kind of depends, right? When you go out hunting, there's quite a bit of luck involved here, right? So, but should I get my animal, I will have no problem getting either one with my compound. I haven't shot a compound in 11 years, okay? But you look at my oldest video on YouTube for my Martin Magnum Phantom, that was about 11 years ago, okay? That is the very first time in my life I ever shot a compound, and it was the proper side. It was left-handed. I'm left-handed dominant, left eye dominant. Mind you, I do shoot compounds, both left-handed compound and a right-handed compound, and I do the same thing with traditional archery. I am able and capable of doing both. No, I am not ambidextrous, and no, I do not have two dominant eyes. I'm just a weird egg that can do it, okay? Don't ask me how, because I don't have an answer. I just can. So, whichever way, whichever bow of the two compounds I bring, whatever I'm aiming at, as long as it's within range of my sight system and or fudge room of my sight system, that animal is going down and going into my freezer, okay? And I will have food for quite a long time, all right? So, that is the biggest benefit to the compounds, is they're very easy to become very proficient with quickly. So it's a short learning curve as far as that goes. Traditional, lot longer curve, okay? Because you're gap shooting or instinctive, way longer time period. There's no way in God's green earth, no matter how good I get in the next 3 months before hunting season opens again, that I will be that good on a traditional bow no matter how many shots a day I take. It's not going to happen. That's why I'm going compound this year for hunting, okay? Because I know for sure, as long as everything works mathematically and range-wise, etc., I'm bringing home food for the freezer, okay? So, but the downsides are there, okay? They do take a lot more care and maintenance and careful handling, and, same thing as, I mean, if you drop a recurve bow or a long bow, like traditional bows, the likelihood of you damaging them from just dropping them is like pretty much zero, okay? You drop a compound bow, they're a lot heavier, they have more fragile parts because they have so many parts, and they have the sight system that can get knocked out of whack or bent if you drop it, or you could bend a pulley or a cam. I mean, there's the negative sides to if you drop it. And you know what? A lot of people, they think that, oh, I can handle shooting targets, I can handle shooting a deer or a moose or whatever. Problem is, you do that, you shoot it, you all of a sudden get this adrenaline rush of excitement, and you're like, drop it, go chase the animal, right? So you got to deal with that crap ahead of time, okay, and not be like that. Try your best, because you could be damaging your compound if you go that freakazoid with your excitement. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get pretty excited when I drop an animal, but I also know for a fact that I'm the kind of person who has enough self-restraint to put my bow down gently, okay, and not rush out, okay? Besides, once you shoot that thing, if it does run, if you do not get a dead drop shot and it runs, you're going to have to wait for a little bit anyway, so you might as well chill, collect your brain cells, put your bow down gently, and prepare to go on the walk for the blood trail to find where your animal finally stopped running. And let's hope you got a good enough shot that you didn't just wound it, or you're never finding that animal, okay? So you need the kill zone, right? Anyhow, I'm not going to discuss different broadheads, what you should or shouldn't use, because even I don't have a flipping clue what you should use. All I know, I'm going for Dead Meat version 2. So I've done enough investigating into them. That's going to be my choice this year. And if they work out great, fine. If they don't work out great, which I can't see any reason why they wouldn't, but if they don't, well, hey, that's life. You know, you learn, right? But yeah, and when I go for turkey, well, I may go for just a straight out turkey broadhead, or I may go with something different. You know, I do have options, right? We all have options. But I think when it comes to the compounds, they do have some negatives, definitely, and some things that you need to be very cautious about when handling a compound, right? But I do believe that the pros still outweigh the cons, no matter if you go traditional or compound. They both have their pluses and minuses to them. You just got to decide which one you are going to prefer to deal with the most, to be honest. I have a video about traditional bows with the pros and cons on it as well. And I went pretty in depth with it, and this I'm more or less doing the same thing. I'm sure I'm probably going to miss a couple of items, and if you're more experienced with compounds than me, then feel free to comment below of what I may have missed on cons versus pros. But I'm pretty confident that we've covered enough of it that, you know, as long as you take, you know, the good care of it, you don't be dropping it, don't be flinging it around, you wax the string every time before you use it to keep the string in its best shape. My strings, as far as me and the archery shop can tell, are stock original strings. Both of those bows are from the 2012 period, okay? So we think they're original, especially the Bear Apprentice more than anything. It definitely looks full stock original string. So it was maintained to a certain point, but it also looks like it had never been shot either. It still has the original Whisker Biscuit that showed absolutely zero wear on it. So we're kind of wondering, did somebody just buy it and throw it in the closet kind of thing? I don't know. You know, my Stinger obviously has definitely been shot a lot, but the Whisker Biscuit on it is in fantastic shape, and the strings and cables on both bows are in excellent condition for their age. And, you know, that's what happens. If you maintain them and you wax them, they can last you for years. So you don't necessarily have major maintenance on a compound every year, but you do have minor things that need to be looked at. And, you know, some of these things like your cams and your idler wheels and stuff, you need to have those looked at by an expert to make sure everything's still good. You know, maybe get the tiller checked on it, make sure everything's still aligned properly. If you're adjusting your limbs yourself, by all means go for it, because, I mean, you're better to learn your bow as much as you can. And you don't need a bow press to adjust things like draw length, which you should only ever have to set once for you anyways, ever. But you definitely do not need a bow press either to adjust the limbs. But you do have to know the manufacturer's specs of your bow to know how many cranks out you can actually go. And if you're not sure where they're currently setting, because they may already have been opened up already to drop some weight off, then turn them all the way in and turn them back to no more than the maximum amount Then check the weight with a weight scale, see where it's sitting at, but make sure those limbs are both exactly perfect to each other, and that requires a micrometer. So you set one limb, you mic it up, you lock the mic, you take that, go to the other limb, check it, and make sure it's the exact same precise fit of the teeth of the micrometer in between the bottom of the limb and the top of the riser. And as long as they match, fine. If they don't, make them match. Okay, little tweak this way, little tweak that way, whatever it takes to get them absolutely perfect, and everything will be set fine. Otherwise, you have an untuned and unbalanced bow that is not going to shoot correctly. Okay, I go very anal about it when it comes to adjusting those limbs, because I know about compound bows quite a bit. I'm no expert at this archery thing, but what I do know, I know extremely well, and I've done a lot of studying, even off and on over the years, but I've done more studying in the last couple of months since I've gotten full swing into this. It's just amazing the information I've been able to log into my mind and keep there, and I'm still logging more and more info in because I'm looking at more and more newer channels, different channels, same channels, different videos, etc. And I'm learning and absorbing everything I can so that it gives me the best possible knowledge and abilities for what I've chosen to do for archery on both sides. Anyways, that's all I got for you. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts. And until next time, see ya.